Thank you very much, Craig. Well, it's a little bit blinding, so we're going to do the best we can here. So, as Craig mentioned, it's today is going to be IT planning, maximizing value, security, and resources. All right. And we already went through introductions. And kind of the first slide that we wanted to cover today was, the graph kind of outlays everything that we're going to be talking about. So IT strategy incorporates the key performance indicators, the technology you use, the processes that you have in the company, people management, the organization itself, then also partners and alliances like ourselves. All right, some of the benefits of the IT strategy. We have the technology roadmap, documents business context and key initiatives, the strategic blueprints, transform, transform current state to desired future state. We're going to be talking about that a lot in this session today. The tactical side of it, kind of the day-to-day nitty-gritty things that we do. And then also the align technology initiatives with the business goals, which is extremely important. And then, apologize. I should have worn my glasses. Not a list of IT to-dos, which is also very important. I mean, it kind of all incorporates into that, so.
Yeah. So what I want to convey for a few minutes here is that in the next 35, 40 minutes, we're going to give you a chance to just really kind of think about your organization. I'm sure most of you in here go through a process of creating an IT budget. That might be a single year, could be a 2, 3 year. I wonder how many of you have a 5 or a 7 year budget plan. We really want to talk about more so the IT roadmap and the strategy. Technology today should not be much different than what you expect the heating and the air conditioning, the electricity in your facility. Your end users, your leaders, your board members expect when they walk in that it's operating, right? And just like you turn the light switch on. And so about 3 times today during our presentation, we're going to stop for maybe 2 minutes, maybe 3, and just give you a chance to reflect. There's a couple of handouts, and when we get to that, I'll talk more about it. But again, take a few moments now, think about, where you sit from an organization, and we'll do a couple of those awkward pauses as we go through today and kind of talk about it. So, continue, Jason.
All right, perfect. Thanks, Todd. Why have an IT strategy? It's a very good question. So number one is to increase the stakeholder support. The business value, every business needs to make money, so we need to definitely increase ways to do that. The security posture, profitability, and then identify the potential risks and strategies to mitigate them. As you know, security is a huge concern that is pretty much never ending. And then also gaps by mapping out the current state to the desired future state, like looking out the 5 years back. And then assist in mapping out your IT investments and then the resource allocation. And then how to create an IT strategy. Number one, we got to assemble a cross-functioning team throughout your whole organization, and you have to tap into all the different departments, from the the C-level suite down to even some of the lesser known ones as well, just so we can get a kind of that real understanding of the business as a whole. And then understanding the future business strategy, which is huge, kind of going from looking the 5 years and then back, as we are going to continue to talk about. Assessing the current state of IT. Where are you at? Where are your problems? What are you good at? Kind of going through that SWOT analysis of the current state. And scan external factors and technology. And then again, envision the future state. Where do we want to be in 5 years? And then looking back and how we can get to that 5-year mark from where we're at. And then conduct the gap analysis and analyze different scenarios and strategic options. And again, continuing on, so it's crafting the IT strategy, again, going out to kind of the 5-year plan, defining the IT operating model. You know, are we going to be on the more agile side or the more kind of structured side? And then analyze the IT initiatives and prioritize those based on the value, cost, and complexity. We have kind of a neat graphic that kind of showcases that further into the presentation. And then detail out the implementation roadmap, socialize and secure buy-in from stakeholders, and then assign the success metrics for the KPIs. And then kind of like how the graphic shows, you need to continuously govern the journey and communicate with everybody. You know, I always like to say, you know, over-communicate, and you know, you always got to make sure that everybody is aware of what's going on.
So Jason talked a couple of times about looking out 5 years. My career in healthcare has been quite a few decades, therefore the gray. A lot of times we were dealing with day-to-day, week-to-week, quarter-to-quarter type of projects. It really takes leaders to take time from their daily standard task work to strategize. If you can think of where you want your organization, where technology is going to support the goals of the company, because again, technology needs to be supporting the business goals. If you can put your mind and your team out there 5 years and look backward, it's a little easier than looking from now forward, because you're always going to look at that next hurdle. You're always going to look at that next thing that we have to cross. Or you're going to be thinking, well, we've tried that, it's not going to work. But if you as leaders in IT can put yourself in a strategy position with your strategy people in your organization going, this is where my company wants to be, we need to be in 5 years, and you look back, and if you have the buy-in from the stakeholders that Jason was talking about and you're continually talking about this, those leaders in yourself will be able to remove those hurdles a lot easier than trying to cross them if you're running forward. It takes a long time to get that concept through, but strategists, people who do this, not just in technology, but just overall strategy for organizations, they're visionaries. They're at that 5-year mark or 7-year mark. Maybe your company is in merger acquisition mode. Maybe your company is looking at a significant regulatory change that you have to be ready for. Maybe your company is just trying to keep the resources you have and you're in a market that's really challenging, right? So whatever the scenario is, you have to be very cognitive and take time to put yourself 5 years from now and look back into the current state.
Perfect. Thank you, Todd. All right. And this kind of is going, you know, more in depth. The ad graphic, you know, ignore that. So, yeah, so like I said before, you know, we want people with different expertise, with different departments, you know, all throughout the organization from the C-suite down. And, you know, the big thing is, you know, going through the challenge of the modern business environment. You know, each individual, you know, sector is going to have their own challenges that we need to address. And, you know, as a person in, you know, that particular business sector, you're going to know better, you know, than anybody else. So, and then, you know, it's also good to note, you know, we want consistent innovation. And, you know, for instance, Tesla and you know, those types of companies out there that are always, you know, innovating and striving to do better. That's how we're going to get ahead, and that's how we're going to continue to, you know, increase our profitability.
Stay there, Jason. So this is the first awkward pause moment. So in front of you, Craig was able to hand out a kind of a 14 dot roadmap, template, Jason and Todd's thoughts, whatever you want to call it, right? And so we're going to pick 3 of these as we go through this morning, kind of talk about it. And so the first one, and on yours, I think you probably have on the back side, it's blank. On the front side, it actually has what the first circle is, which is assemble a cross-functional team. What I'd like you guys to do is take the next 60 to 90 seconds and just think about your organization and think about that if you had to identify a handful of individuals to lead an IT strategy from a cross-functional discipline, who you might add. I'm just going to let it be quiet for about 60 seconds here. And then what I'd like to do when we're done with that is if anybody would like to volunteer, maybe somebody had an aha moment that said, man, maybe I guess I didn't think to bring on one of our staff members that's completely remote. How are they feeling our technology stack is doing? So just take another 45 seconds or so and think about departments, specific individuals, maybe a location of an individual, maybe a subject matter expert. Maybe there's some succession planning that's going to be happening in the next 5 years. Maybe you need to think about that. For someone like me who likes to talk, this is really awkward. Just to. All right, we'll kind of button up there. And again, we just want to really give you guys just a couple of minutes to kind of be in that moment of strategy thinking. So maybe we don't have any volunteers, but does anybody have somebody or a department or something they wrote down around a cross-functional team that they maybe didn't think about until just now, kind of that aha moment? So I had one when I was at the medical center when we did this. Completely forgot that one of our board of directors owned and operated a very large technology company. Talk about wanting stakeholder buy-in. Talk about wanting a colleague that can have a conversation, whether it's around resource needs, financial needs, change in business plan. So again, that was one that I knew who our board members were. Once in a while, I had a chance to be in front of them until I really sat down and thought about that individual is somebody who I think could really help this process. Anyway, just thanks for taking 90 seconds and thinking about that.
All right. Perfect. Thanks, Todd. And then kind of going through the future business strategy, kind of the key components of business strategy, the vision and the objectives. What are the core values of your business? What really makes you stand out among the competitors? And then the SWOT analysis, like I mentioned before, your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and just really doing a deep dive on those individual components of the SWOT. The tactics and the operational delivery, the resources and resource allocation, and that could be anything from not having enough resources or having an abundance of resources in a particular area that you can tap into. And then also, the measurement and then the analysis of that data. And then always be future thinking.
I'm going to add one thing on resources and about succession planning. If you can put your mind out 5 years and you look back at your current IT resources, your IT team, who's going to be retiring? Who's in a leadership or in an engineering role that at some point is going to retire? Do you have a backfill plan? Are you conveying that historical knowledge from that individual to the next individual? Sometimes planning, succession planning, has such a short window that you can only convey a little bit of that. So really think about resource planning when you look at a 5-year plan. Sometimes those resources will be on-prem, right? Your own employees. Sometimes there's strategic partners. Sometimes there's strategic business partners that you leverage, right? So again, think about where resource consumption or resource succession planning could be.
Perfect. Thanks, Todd. All right. And this is the next one that...
So we're going to, on the back or on your round diagram again, the third slot talks about the current state. So Jason and I and some of our team just thought about throwing up a word mash. So I can read those to you, but I'll just pick out a few. So when you think about the current state of your technology platforms, everything from operating systems to the security of those. There's a lot of security up there around MFA, end user training, security for end user training, thinking about the physical infrastructure, right? What do you have in all of your locations? Thinking about end of life, end of support on that equipment. I think one of the real things about the current state, as Jay mentioned this morning in his talk about AI, is not only data classifications, but do you know where 100% of your data is at? Are you an organization that exports some of your data to another business partner? Are you an organization that has shadow IT? Shadow IT is just that. It's individuals who are not part of IT, but believe that they're in IT, and they're in other areas, and they have data sets, access to data. How are you monitoring your technology platforms? Just not the individual devices, but how are you monitoring that your uptime is going to be where it needs to be? So again, for this word mash here, take about 60 to 90 seconds here and just think about your platforms, your organization. I think Jason, in the slide a couple down the road here, you're going to get to the SWOT analysis, but you mentioned it, right, about strengths, opportunities, et cetera. Vulnerabilities is a big thing here. Staying in front of it as much as you can. So take the next 60 seconds, think about this word mash, think about your technology platforms, and kind of what your current state is. So with that information, with your thoughts, I'm sure that wasn't 60 seconds, but anyway, we're going to take that current state, or at least the thoughts that you had there, and in a little while, we're going to talk about building a gap analysis.
Perfect. Thank you, Todd. So, assessing the external factors and the trends. What are the current trends that are out in the industry? And, it kind of covers, everybody. And then, make sure to, as a little tag for us, leverage NCI to help. We have a lot of just very smart people. Many of them are a lot better speaking than I can, be on stage here. But, then go through the emerging and existing technologies that enhance the productivity and boost the revenue. I mean, there's just a plethora of different technologies out there, and it seems like they're changing daily. And it's hard to stay up to date with all the different technologies. But then on one of the things to note is be on the cutting edge and not the bleeding edge. The cutting edge is kind of the sweet spot. If you get too aggressive, obviously you're going to have a whole lot of just downtime with different bugs and things like that that are in the different technologies. And then some of the trends to consider, like we talked about today, artificial intelligence. And, where is that for your organization? How are you going to adopt that for your organization? And, what's forward thinking, the 5 years out? How are we going to, bridge that gap with artificial intelligence? And kind of like what they talked about today, it's, what truly is AI versus like predictive analytics. Cybersecurity, I mean, it's huge. I mean, it's a never-ending kind of problem that we have. and artificial intelligence is going to only increase that. You know, what about Internet of Things, the IoT? Augmented reality. We have a very cool vendor out there that is showcasing augmented reality and how that could benefit your organization. You should go see. And then, you know, IT governance and compliance and how that all kind of loops in.
Yeah, let me throw a little plug in here for our IT panelists later today. So we have the opportunity to have 3 of our customers here, and then we're going to have Jay, our keynote, also at the end of the day be part of our leaders in IT panel. 2 major things we're going to kind of chat through with them and get their real perspective on a peer-to-peer basis is the AI world and where their organizations are at and some of the opportunities, pitfalls, things like that. We're also going to talk about security and what the organizations are doing to layer security. So if you can, please stick around for the IT panelist at the end. In years past, that's been a good Q&A session. So.
And then going through the gap analysis.
Yeah, so this one will take just a few more minutes. And so when Jason and I were talking about gap analysis, there's a lot of things out there from a template perspective that you can quickly hit up and pull one of the templates in. But we kind of pulled together maybe 5 or 6 areas of the gap analysis that at least the both of us thought made a lot of sense. And so the first one was the cross functional team piece, right? We talked about that. You use that to basically define your IT vision. And the vision for IT, again, in most organizations, I would be pressed to hear an organization that would not want IT supporting their business goals. So whatever the business strategy is, from a goal perspective, from a vision, IT needs to be supporting that 100%. That will get you more buy-in from the resource needs that you will have. Again, look out 5 years. If you can put yourself 5 years from today and start looking back, we believe that that will give you a better opportunity to have a much more solid IT vision and IT strategy. So the second part of the gap analysis is kind of based on the current state, right? The word mash you just looked at, to take a lot of time and look at what your current state is. Thinking about that, you know, there'll be a SWOT analysis as part of that, but did you think about your infrastructure? Did you think about your applications? What are they going to be 5 years from now? Did you think about your data? Did you think about the security, not only of your data, but the security of all of your devices? The physical security of your network, the physical security of your data center, right? Again, looking out 5 years. Do you have IT governance in your organization? How are you governing that you have a single source of truth for X, whatever the X data set is? If you have multiple sets of that, how do you know that they're always in sync? Resources. How are you today with resources? How are you going to be 3 years from now with resources? How are you going to be 5 years today for resources? We all know what's happening with the job market. And so again, do we know what 5 years is going to look like? Maybe you do in your organization, maybe you don't. And then cost. You have to really look at what the cost of the IT strategy is going to be. So once you look at your current state, then we want you to identify the gaps. This is the deep dive. This is where you have to take, hey, I have a weakness here. I want to dig into it deeper. Now, that might take other subject matter experts from your organization. Like, okay, you know what? We have a problem with validating that all of our data is secure by all of our workforce that's remote. Who do you need to pull together to really understand what that world is? Now, if you're one of the remote workforce, you probably have a good idea. You know, if you're somebody like Jason who's in our Fargo office every day, it's different. I sit remote in Bismarck, and so it's different for me to use our tools than for Jason to be on our LAN. It's just a different feel, flavor. Again, then, you know, after you've identified your gaps, then it's analyzing the gaps. And again, I would suggest that you look at those gaps with an urgency and with a risk. High risk creates high urgency, which could have a significant risk impact to your business. So after you look at urgency and risk, look at the feasibility. Is it something that I can do with my team, my resources? Do I have a strategic partner that I can leverage to help with those resources? And then look at the cost. The last step of the gap analysis is the development of action plans. Now, this becomes the tactical part and the operational part that Jason mentioned earlier, right? It becomes very specific. What's the action? What's the timeline around the action? Who's responsible? Who's accountable? Maybe you need to build out a RACI document in order to pull that together. But each of your gaps should have a very defined, actionable plan behind it. So take the next 60 or 90 seconds here and think about maybe some of the things that you wrote down on your current state, and think about where you might have some gaps in your organization. So one of the things that Jason and I and the rest of our NCI team talk about is risk of one. So when you look at your gaps, do you have risk of one in your organization? Do I have a high-end database engineer who's a risk of one that knows all of my data sets inside and out and how they're interacting and all the integrations and the APIs? And he's 63. Wife happens to have oil on the land from her parents, right? I mean, what could it be? So again, I think really understanding that. So again, awkward pauses, I'm not good at them. Just try to give you a few minutes to think about it. So Jason, why don't you continue on?
Are you sure we don't want any more awkward moments? All right. Again, talking about the envision the future state, looking, 5 years back. So design from the future backwards, not from the present forwards. Really focus on the possibilities and not the limitations. Because if you have the right stakeholders involved, you're going to be able to blow through those roadblocks very easily when you have a significant plan in place and have buy-in. And then, foster the creativity and innovation in which will lead to breakthroughs in their organization and, hopefully add to the profitability. And then think outside the box. We're kind of constrained sometimes by thinking that we have to limit what we do, but always think about, the other possibilities and never think something is too crazy of an idea until you vet it through. All right, so kind of the things that we don't want to do when we're envisioning the future state is don't rush to the judgment of kind of we've tried this before and it doesn't work. Always have the attitude of good luck getting or don't have the attitude of good luck getting that approved for that. Because if you have the appropriate stakeholders in place, you're going to be able to, get a lot of things pushed through that you never thought you'd be able to get pushed through. And then don't harbor the thought, we don't have time for that now. Because if you think about, from 5 years back, and all of the different innovations that we could have implemented and hopefully increase the profits, no time is better than now to work on this. And then don't say they will never or this will never work because our culture is different. Culture is extremely important, and every business has a different culture. But no matter what, you need to continue to try to strive to implement this in your organization. All right, we've talked about this previously. So the SWOT analysis, what are the strengths, what are the weaknesses, opportunities, and threats of the organization? Kind of basically what does your organization do really well? What does your organization not do well? And not, when you're talking about weaknesses, don't think of that as a negative because you can always turn weaknesses into strengths. But you need to make sure that you list out the weaknesses to have a better picture of where you're at in the organization. And then what are the opportunities of the organization? and then threats like from, different competitors.
Excuse me, I think the infographic that you have has a lot of sub-items underneath each of the categories, right? So Jason was just kind of rattling off a few. So this takes time to think about. And I would wonder if I did a SWOT analysis for NCI and Jason did it and I asked Craig to do it, would they be similar? If I asked our HR person, would they be different? So again, the SWOT analysis just shouldn't come from the lens of the IT director or the CIO or the CISO or the CEO. It should be an analysis across all of your users.
Perfect. Great insight, Todd. All right. So and now analyze the different scenarios and options. The pestle, for instance. What are the political, economic, social, technological, legal, and environmental constraints that you have to work through as an organization? What are the current market trends and the customer needs? I mean, we, often forget about, the importance of, the different needs of the customer and how those are changing by a day-by-day basis. Identify potential opportunities or areas of growth.
Yeah, I think the underneath pestle, last year Jason talked a little bit more about that. With the legal environment, with the changing in policies and leadership, local level, state level, federal level, right? There's always going to be regulatory change, particularly if you're in a regulated industry. How are you staying abreast of that? How are you thinking about where pestle is going to be 5 years from now? That's a challenge. That's kind of needing to have that golden ball. But it's really important to look at pestle.
Perfect. All right, and we touched base on this a little bit before, kind of the traditional IT operating model versus agile. And we don't need to go through all of it because you're going to get the slide deck sent out or the ability to download, and then so you can kind of go through that or take a picture. But these are kind of just the differences between the traditional and then agile methodologies. And then this is kind of one of my favorite kind of graphics. The complexity to value model. The value to business versus, how complex is it? So if it is extremely valuable to the business and it's low complex, that's kind of what I call low-hanging fruit. Get that done as you work through things and just kind of knock those off as soon as possible. And then if it is complex but it has a high value to business, make sure that is priority number one. And then if it has low value to business and is very low on the complexity scale, do that when you can. And then of course if it's low value, highly complex, pass over it. Don't even consider working on those types of projects.
Quick side note, I had the opportunity to do this with one of our customers 3 years ago. I had the CEO, the CFO, Chief Marketing Officer, now the individual's now a Chief Operations Officer. We walked them through this. I think we picked 5 things and had each one of them superimpose their number or their initials over the 4 blocks. It didn't look the same. But it allowed that executive team over the next 3 months to decide what they wanted to put their resources to because they had limited resources. And so not a hard exercise, easy to moderate the exercise because it's really letting the other leaders decide where the value comes. You have to put the complexity model around it from a technology perspective. But it was really interesting.
Yeah. Great side note, Todd. And then kind of how to implement the roadmap. So, the tactics are generally high-level initiatives. Each tactic should have a timeline and then comprised of smaller tasks or jobs, also with timelines. And then assign it to an owner, and make sure that the owner is somebody that is, trustworthy, and then also has the requirements in place, and that they have deliverables that they need to present on a timely fashion. There we go. And it, like we've talked about before, securing buy-in from stakeholders. So what really motivates the stakeholders? I mean, all the different, as Todd has alluded to, multiple times, is everybody in the organization has different motivations, and so that when you have all the people in a group, you have to be very tactical on knowing what motivates them. And then, it goes without saying, but be truthful. Don't hide the bad. Make sure that they know exactly, what is really going on, the good, the bad, the ugly. And kind of going off of number one is what are the expectations of the stakeholders? And once you really get to know the stakeholders on a deeper level, those expectations should be relatively easy to, learn. And then reaffirm the goals and communicate the progress. Remain consistent. And then also provide constant feedback. All right, so kind of the governing side of things is making sure that you set the deadlines. Define the goals, and then, as we've talked about before, is research the trends, prioritize the initiatives, and then also monitor the progress. And that kind of goes with the different KPIs and the analytics. Anything to add?
I would just, I don't want to show of hands or anything, but think about, does your organization have an information governance committee? Who's on it? What's their responsibility? Really important. And if you don't have a real understanding of information governance, reach out. There's a lot of experts. There's a lot of people that can help you. A few years ago, we put on I think a recap of what information governance was. Really important. So governing your information in the organization is really important.
All right, then kind of like what we just previously talked about, assigning the metrics, the KPIs, the key performance indicators, the quantifiable measurements that you're going to baseline everything off. Remember, it's no one size fits all. So the KPIs are going to be different for all the different organizations. And usually has the several different metrics involved, benchmarks. Determine your business performance based on the industry. And these are, I'd say, kind of fun to kind of go through because it really measures how you're doing against your competitors. Set the metrics before starting, and then make sure to monitor from beginning to end. And then one last thing, just always to make sure to be in constant communication, and also just govern the journey as you go through it. Okay, and then this kind of goes through the challenges that you're going to have when you kind of go through the IT road mapping is kind of the uncertainty. As you begin, like any new process, there's going to be uncertainties, and especially when you're looking at hopefully like the 5 years back, that's kind of a long time to be looking at kind of the strategic side of things. I'd say, 1 through 3 years are going to be more solidified, and then year 4 and 5 are going to be kind of fuzzy, but you still can have kind of a 5-year plan, even though you don't know exactly what's going to happen. And then, subject matter experts. You might not have the proper subject matter experts to deliver on, the IT roadmap, and that's where you need to tap into different resources. Stakeholder misalignment, that's a big one. If, there could be miscommunication, there could be, different things that are shifting, the stakeholders' kind of, information or knowledge on in particular areas that causes that misalignment. Document roadmaps, documents or documentation stinks, and it's not easy. It's not fun, but it is a priority, and it needs to be done. But that's kind of one of the reasons why I put it underneath the challenge. And then also one of the challenges is really kind of identifying and prioritizing initiatives, especially when you first start out. It's a huge task, especially with any sizable organization. And then the collaboration between teams. It's kind of funny with all of the different technologies out to enhance collaboration. Communication is still hard, and you need to make sure that you have that constant communication. Kind of just the roadmap review. Some things that we want to just take note of is, do quarterly check-ins, and then also continually revisit your business strategy, because as the business strategy changes, we need to make sure that we adopt the IT roadmap to those changes, and then analyze the short-term and long-term goals of the organization, and then kind of like what I said, as business plans change, adjust the IT strategy, and then also monitor for benchmark changes.
Let me interject one thing here on the revisit business strategy. If you as a leader in IT today don't have the ear of your strategists, or where whoever you're reporting to is not feeding down to you that a business strategy is potentially going to change, or something's going to happen in our business environment that we need to be ready for, that communication coming to you needs to happen. Do as much as you can to facilitate that round-robin communication around business strategy.
Perfect. Thanks, Todd. All right, more slides. So, create an IT strategy blueprint. As we've talked about time and time again. Looking 5 years back. And I was supposed to have a timer on this, but was this another one that you were going to?
I'll take this one.
Yep.
If you want. So again, all we're trying to do here, and this is our last slide, and we're coming up on the end of the time. This picture graph just is very similar to what's on your handout. We wanted to call out that part of your strategy is the discovery process. Again, part of the strategy is, what is your business strategy? Where's your business going? What's your organization looking to do in the next 3 to 5 years? We've got to create implementation plans that we've talked about for any of those gaps that were identified. What weaknesses do you have that you can turn into opportunities so that those opportunities then become strengths? What threats do you have that you're monitoring real time as quickly as you can and mitigating those to protect your organization, right? That's the responsibility of IT leadership. It's the responsibility of everybody in the organization. But your CISOs, you as yourself, are going to be, you and others are going to look towards leaders in technology to protect data, to protect your customer data, et cetera. So, and then, costs are going to be a big thing. They always are. Resources are a cost. Applications have a cost. Everything has a cost, right? Not very often does IT create revenue. Now, if you're a software development firm, that might be different. But for most companies, IT is a cost center. Recognize it. Tell your stakeholders you know it's a cost center. Tell them that you are frugal with your finances and that the best interest you have is in the bottom balance sheet of the organization and keeping risk low and keeping IT supporting the business technology. For those of you that this is just a recap of what you already do, congratulations. This is a great thing to have in place running right now. For those of you that might just do a yearly or a 2-year budget, that's fine also. There's a starting point, right? So take some time, and it's tough to carve time out of your day, I know that. But IT leaders today need to become strategists, just not tactical implementers. Easy to say, right? Implementers. So with that, I think that's our last slide, Jason. We'll take some questions. We are just a few minutes between lunch and Q&A here, but Jason and I like to talk about this stuff. Jason and I have had an opportunity to work together twice in our career. And so from a strategy perspective, he does a great job bringing across the operational areas together, just not technology. So any questions from the group? Yes, sir.
So this is a question for both of you guys, especially based on your roles. Can you just very briefly describe how you guys work together on your 5-year plan to decide a strategy, just the briefest manners?
I can start that, if that's all right.
Yep.
In our organization, when there's new technologies, whether a customer is bringing that to us saying, do you do this? Do you have this? Do you support this? We bring it through a vetting committee. That vetting committee has people from our sales account exec team to our infrastructure manager to our senior engineers and to our president and to our VP of sales and myself. And we vet those through, that group, about the demand, where it's at in bleeding edge or real time, ready for prime time. And we're always working that through. Now, the challenge with that is it's difficult to say what 5 years looking back is going to be. But from an organization, are we in a growth perspective 5 years looking back in? So we do talk about this. We strategize quarterly and then annually on where we're at. And we're a smaller company, right? 80 employees. It's easier to do it than some of the companies that have 1,000 seats of employees. So, oh, Jason, you want to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, it's just constant collaboration. We need, like Todd said, I mean, always continually looking at what is the new technologies. I mean, for instance, like AI, it's a big topic. Everybody's talking about it. Is it ready for prime time yet? No. But we need to make sure that we are ready for when it does hit prime time, and just working between the cross departments and making sure that, on my side and then also Todd's side, we are very, collaborating on when we are going to be ready and then who's going to take ownership of that when that is ready. And that's just one instance, but, even with cybersecurity on the Knox side of things and just, utilizing, the great minds that I have the privilege of managing, and just kind of working through the different departments there.
And we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about our business partners.
Yeah.
And some of them are out in the hall today, right? There are vendors that are here, but we meet with them. We ask what's coming, what's in their roadmap, what do we need to be prepared for. We invest in training for some of our engineers to go to different conferences and to pick up what's out there and bring it back. And so from a person perspective, there's a couple of models of running your business. We happen to use a model that we look for right person, right seat on the bus type of thing. So again, is there changes happening within our technology stack or platform that we have a seat on the bus, but nobody in that seat, or we have a risk of one in that seat, right? And so those are some of the concepts and tools we use. I hope that answers your question. Yeah, absolutely. Anybody else? Other questions?
Describe this vetting policy a little bit. I want to give me just a little bird's eye view. What is a vetting policy for you guys? What does that look like?
The policy or the process?
The process itself. I mean,
Yep.
whatever makes sense.
Yep. So Craig, being account exec here, is out with customers, potential customers, right? And so our account execs, we have one of the members from our sales team on the vetting committee, and they will bring back what they're hearing. I have 3 customers asking about this technology. May not be asking about a vendor, but about a technology. Pick whatever technology you want, right? Once we hear that, then we look to some of our business partners and try to converse with them about, is this in your stack? Is it not in their stack? Has there been M&A activity with one of our business partners that they've bought that or brought that into their stack? And then again, so we look for the demand. We'll then vet through potential partners. Then we engage some of our senior engineers to definitely do a demo of whatever we're looking at. They're not in the first round, right? We need to first find out, is this the right thing for our customers or us? If so, then we dig into the potential tool and what it can do. Then we have our security people. If we get it narrowed down to 2, our security gentleman or team looks at which one seems to have a better posture for us and our customer. It doesn't do any good for us to vet something that, yeah, this is the right thing for NCI if it's not the right thing for you guys.
Right.
Because we don't make a widget, sell a widget, right? We have human capital, engineering labor. So that's the process. And it's just not a one and done. It may take half a year to vet something through.
Yeah, we've had that multiple times.
Thanks for sharing the time.
Absolutely.
Take a look.
Yep. Anything else we can chat?
All right.
Thank you for attending. Thank you for the questions. Enjoy the rest of today and Envision.
Thank you.